All right, Mxt Cycle 14. You guys better buckle in for this one. It's going to be an awesome one. We have 4, as always, awesome strength progressions to take you guys through. One of those strength progressions is actually going to be an Olympic lift. It's going to be a clean, an explosive clean. I've spent a lot of time coaching beginners and advanced lifters in Olympic lifts. And as we start to plan out with our coaches how we're going to be delivering this relatively technical movement to our athletes in class, we are discussing the best ways that I've learned to coach this movement in a group class setting. So if you've never experienced a clean before, or if you have been concerned about trying to learn how to do a barbell clean in the group class setting, rest assured you are in great hands. In addition to the clean, we're also going to have some bench press, all right? Just a standard barbell bench press. We're going to work our way up, see how heavy we can get at a relatively high volume. 5 to 8 reps is where we're going to be capping out for that. Eventually, we'll get to that heavy 1 rep or 2 rep or 3 rep max, but we want to make sure that we establish that volume and make sure everyone's keeping their shoulders healthy with the bench press before we go super heavy and low volume with that movement. In addition to that, similar to what you experienced in cycle 13, we are going to have a progression to a 5 rep max front squat. I know a lot of people have been working with the front squat in previous cycles with us in class, and that's awesome. That progression that you've used and some of those numbers and the RPE system that you've used to find where some of your weights are going to be on the front squat will definitely come in handy in this cycle 14 as we start at about an RPE of 7 to 8 and build up to, in week 4, testing what our 5 rep max front squat is going to be. One thing to note with the front squat, there are ways in which you can avoid the front rack position if it does cause you issues with your wrist. Maybe you lack lat or upper back mobility, and that's fine. You can still accomplish the exact same thing with that movement if you're using straps, if you're crossing your arms, or if you're using the safety bar. However, as we start to incorporate some barbell cleans into our strength components, establishing a really solid front rack position is important. And the best way to get to that solid front rack position is going to be by drilling it and using weight in the front squat in that front rack position. It's the same position we'll catch our clean in as the same position we're going to be front squatting in. So I will encourage you, if you are interested in improving your clean front rack position or learning the clean for the first time, start to work in the true front rack position with our front squats. It pays off in the long run as we start to develop and further improve our form on those cleans. In addition to those front squats that we're going to be working through in cycle 14, we're also going to be continuing the overhead progression in the overhead squat that we started in cycle 13. In cycle 13, for many of you, it was probably the first time that you had even thought about overhead squatting. And hopefully with the assistance and encouragement from a lot of our coaches, you either started with a band overhead, progressed to dumbbells overhead, maybe with some plates underneath your heels. And hopefully by week 4, we started to get a little bit more confidence and pop that barbell overhead, maybe again with some plates under our heels to first experience the overhead squat with the barbell. For some of us, maybe we've been overhead squatting for a little while and you had the opportunity to add some weight. Over the next 4 weeks, we're going to be picking up where we left off with that movement. All right, we're going to be either adding weight to where we were previously at for our overhead squat or continuing to improve that overhead mobility and the overhead position. One of the biggest challenges that we face, and the reason that the overhead squat is so difficult, is because most people lack the shoulder mobility and the hip mobility required to get into the bottom of that squat with the barbell overhead. And the reason for that, I think many people, I'm preaching to the choir here, but we arch our back, round our upper back throughout the day, whether we're on our phone, sitting at our computer, whatever it might be. So the overhead squat is really a way to counteract that. And the reason that we do a lot of band pull-aparts when we're progressing with the overhead squat is to start to open up our chest and to strengthen those muscles in our upper back, all right? The scaps, the muscles between our shoulder blades. So in addition to the front squats, we're going to be continuing to progress the overhead squats. And as always, we're going to continue to challenge you all with the conditioning pieces that we have, the sprint, breathe, and pace stations. One quick note about those 3 stations and the 3 types of workouts there. The difference between those is subtle, but important. We have pace, which is going to be a more steady state duration conditioning workout that includes some resistance and some strength-based movements. All right. Contrast that with our sprint stations, where with our sprint stations, the goal is to get the heart rate as elevated as possible in a short amount of time, give you some form of rest. We play around with the amount of rest and the way that we give you that rest depending on the type of workout that day and the type of time domain. But the main difference between the sprint and the pace stations, pace is going to be more steady state heart rate throughout that 8-minute station. Sprint's going to get your heart rate up, give you a chance to bring it back down, bring your heart rate back up, bring it back down. You get the idea. All right. Both of those stations though include conditioning as well as strength movements incorporated in, so you learn how to balance those and how to continue to move well in some of those dumbbell strength movements while you have an elevated heart rate and while you might be a little bit fatigued. All right. Those two are slightly different, even more so than the breathe stations. The breathe stations, purely conditioning and body weight. And those breathe stations are performed on the days when we are trying to give our central nervous system a little bit of a rest. So when we've just done a heavy front squat the day before and the day before that, maybe we did some hypertrophy lower body work as well. The breathe station is an opportunity to split up the week so that we're not taxing our central nervous system, giving our body what it needs to recover without having to take a full rest day, so we can come back the rest of the week and continue to hit those workouts, those strength movements, those sprint stations, those breathe stations with as much intensity as we can. All right, so a little bit of difference between those three different conditioning stations, all challenging in their own regards. Some find more enjoyable than others, but generally speaking, they all include some conditioning component and some manipulation of the heart rate to achieve a required stimulus. All right, week 4 of the block, we will be testing that 5-rep max on the front squat, the same way that we did for the 5-rep max on the back squat in cycle 13. So keep that in mind as you are establishing and finding the weights that you're going to be using weeks 1, 2, and 3 under that RPE system. All right, awesome workouts ahead. We're excited to continue to see the progress that everyone's making in these new and challenging movements. And this week will be a good test of understanding where we might be with a relatively technical movement in the clean. And we will continue to progress with that clean movement over the next 4, 8, 12, 16 weeks and continue to see what we're capable of with the overhead position as well. Looking forward to coaching you guys through this cycle.